So my name is Hamid Salehi. I'm the Director of Product at AMD Adaptive and Embedded Computing Group. Very excited to have a great panel here. And I guess first and foremost, maybe everybody introduce yourself, what you're working on. And then maybe, just get it a little bit more interesting. Just say one thing that really excites you about, what's happening in ZK this year, I guess.
So I'm Victor. I am an engineer working for Risc. I work on cryptography, platform integration, and Web3 integration. And one of the things I'm really excited about this year is that ZK VMs are actually becoming practical, kind of well understood, and people are able to run real use cases on ZK VMs in production.
So hello. You have to turn it on. Just press it. There you go.
Hello. Okay, I'm Mauro Toscano. I'm from Line Layer. I'm the tech lead and ZK cryptographer. And I'm really excited about all that's going on with ZK. I think like right now, everything is becoming faster and faster, and we will soon be able to make new applications. We have dreamed about building, but we couldn't up until now.
Amazing. Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Francesca. I'm with ZKPass. I'm not a cryptographer. I do BD work in a community, and I'm definitely bullish on ZK use cases and work on integrations and designs and see how these can be applied, especially to into our community and implement this technology. So what I'm bullish about ZK and what I see now is to be able to cross over into mainstream narrative and be able to collaborate with governments and institutions to be able to incorporate ZK technology into Web 2 systems.
All right, great. And since the title of the panel is ZK outside of blockchain, so I think that's a good place to start. And we can start from Marco in terms of just the trends or applications you see for ZK outside of I know people talk about roll-ups and things that are primarily blockchain focused, but outside of that, what do you see happening?
Yes, I think like there are an extreme amount of applications we will see in the future. One of the things we usually discuss is, for example, for real-time bidding. If you are doing a bid for advertising, you usually should let the winner of the bid get the advertising. But for example, as the world gets more polarized and we get, for example, advertising from political parties, you can always suppress one or benefit another one. And there is no way to check you are really being honest. So I think ZK applications in a world where trust is falling will help to regain a little bit of it. I can make like a bigger list, but maybe Victor, if you want to say another application you like.
Yeah, sure. I actually am brainstorming a list as well, but I won't read the list though.
Let's go through the list. Let's go through the list.
If you want to. So one top of my list is something that maybe people here may or may not have heard about, but key transparency is a really big new feature deployed now in WhatsApp, deployed now in Apple iMessage that provides higher security assurance against man-in-the-middle attacks on end-to-end messaging servers. They have a distinct need to ensure an append-only property on a large Merkle tree which logs all key additions. And it just so happens that basically this is a case where their current solution is expensive and socially costly. They have to have auditors basically check this with gigabytes of proofs. Instead, they could use a succinct proof system to run a small cluster of GPUs, maybe 50 GPUs, using current proof systems, which are getting better every day, and actually prove the append-only property of the entire key transparency log. So this is an application where large companies who are deploying into secure messengers and ensuring privacy for real users, with billions of users being impacted, could actually use ZK today. So that's why I'm excited about that one. There's also some other ones as well. So anonymous credentials, ZK FHE is very exciting, including FHE decryption is actually one of the most impactful cases that we need right now, and is actually incredibly doable today. Machine learning inference, autonomous world-style games, policy moderation in private messaging networks, and also proofs of liquidity for banks and funds. Oh, and also photo editing. So if you want to edit photos and prove the authenticity of the photo linked back to a private key held on a camera, which is being rolled out now, the private keys on cameras, then you can actually do this with ZK to do photo editing.
Yeah, you want to add anything?
That's the list.
Yeah, okay.
To continue a little bit on that, that's really important. That's something I really wanted to mention. Like right now, we have really, AI is moving really fast, so we can make fake videos of everyone saying whatever we want. And probably the trust in pictures and videos and audio is going to get lower and lower as time passes. So these cameras can sign the data, so if we get the original file, we can check like that this was in fact a real video or a real audio. But if you then start editing, you kind of lost the signature. So with ZK, we can prove that the edition started from a valid picture, a video, or whatever, and that is actually a human talking and not a machine. And that's going to be really useful in the future.
Yeah, maybe Francesco, you want to maybe comment on it as well, or other applications as well?
Yeah, actually, on that, there was recently a newspaper article talking about the AI faking a identity card and was able to pass the KYC through that. So definitely something that needs to be applied. I'm more community focused, so for me it's like zooming out and trying to figure it out also how to connect the different types of ZK solutions and projects together. Just recently we were connected with ZK Passport. I did yesterday a workshop, and I was also at Vitalia, which is in Prospera Charter City for the concept of a network state. And we're like, how do we create a passport that combines the identity verification with the collaboration of the Honduras government, but also we add the credentials of a visa from Prospera, and as well incorporate perhaps if the Prospera resident has a business incorporated in Prospera, then that could be added as well. So by having this kind of app, it makes it easier as well when you cross through the gate in the Prospera community, then the security guard can just scan, and then we'll see that in fact you have been verified and your passport is verified as having the immigration proper status, and then as well having the e-residency and also being an owner of the incorporation of a business in Prospera. Slightly different concept.
Yeah, so these are like two very, very big use cases, right? Identity as a whole, but also this issue of like establishing provenance for pictures, video. This really can be potentially massively impactful, especially if you want to establish whether a photograph or video is taken at a particular place. If you want to prove genocide happening somewhere and you want to prove that something is taken at such and such time at such and such location. So definitely, I think for humanity, these are really big applications. And maybe going back to, because Victor, you had a massive list and you went through a whole bunch of items. So in your view, as far as, I guess the adoption of the technology mainstream, I guess, what are the bottlenecks or I guess, because each of these could really be this, transformative, but things seems to be going maybe a little bit slower, or maybe we are a little bit impatient. So how do you see, what the challenges are there?
Yeah, so if I look at this list, I think the ones that are practical today require succinctness, but don't necessarily require the zero knowledge property or privacy. So this is like succinct blockchains are incredibly valuable today, and people are willing to pay for them today. Whereas that is not necessarily true of most of the privacy applications, with the really big barrier being that client-side proofs are not yet a good user experience. Like they are now possible to run on phones, which is not something you could say 4 years ago, or like at least for practical size proofs. And I think there's a lot more work to be done on client-side proving to make it really be possible to prove things in less than 2 seconds, less than 1 second, less than 200 milliseconds that are relevant to things like anonymous credentials. And there really has not been nearly enough time or energy invested in that particular use case. Most of the energy is going to server-side proving because that's where the money is today, and that's where we can immediately have an impact and immediately deliver value.
Yeah, That's great. And then maybe same questions, what do you guys see in terms of challenges of, and then for Francisco especially, I guess when it comes to identity, definitely the use case is very compelling, but in terms of adoption, right? What are the challenges? Maybe I start with Marco and then maybe Francisco.
Yes. This one.
Press on it.
Doesn't have anyone. Okay. So I feel like the technology is really young. We are seeing like now, just now for me, like the huge speed ups and performance increases that we need to start actually building this. For example, just today, I think Shahar reported that 2 has 20,000 permutation, can prove 20,000 permutation of Ketchak or Blake 3, I don't remember. So right now, we are starting to have like the technology, but it's still at the low level. So if you want to build an application on top, if someone comes and says to me, I want to build this, it will be hard for me to say, okay, this is the right tech stack to use it. I think, well, Risc is doing a great work making it more easy to use, but we are still not yet. So I think probably the technology needs to stabilize a bit, then we need to build it to be really easy to use, and then this kind of application will start to come. And we will probably see a boom of applications using ZK.
Super. I will speak always from a non-technical standpoint, and I always say and see this issue in our space is that a lot of times the Web3 design solutions for Web3 people, and so it's super important to merge and mix people from different walks to be able to utilize these interfaces and make it easy because at the long-term scalability and adoption is for people that actually are non-technical. And on that, in terms of identity, that's main thing is making the interface more usable, but also with off-chain solutions, it allows you to have a more scalability and not add any transaction cost as well. And when immutability or transparency are not a priority, then perhaps we can still have ZK being utilized for security purposes, but not necessarily utilize the on-chain solutions, and that allows for a little bit more versatility.
So kind of double clicking on that, and this is my own personal question as well, because especially when it comes to identity, it seems that it's a massive value there for the consumer. Mm-hmm. And is it the user experience thing primarily, or is there other issues that really is preventing, the adoption?
I think it's the interface, and we need to really build that bridge of innovation and planting that seed of also, I always had this question asked, people come up to me and they're like, you work in crypto? And I was like, it's like blockchain development. And I tried to make that distinction because, in people's mind, crypto is just Bitcoin and Ethereum and other altcoins and meme coins. So I tried to understand, to show them a little bit of a different, larger aspect and implementation of these technologies. And so how do we do that, right? It starts with education, but really inspire people that are not in our industry to understand that this technology is not here to scam them or to create any kind of like further disruption, but is actually adding, especially in the point of ZK, is allowing us to add another layer of security and to be able to own our data, manage, and own our identity. But what does that mean for people that are used to giving their data away, right? So it really comes back to education, interface, and being a little bit more friendly with people that don't have that tech background and simplify the jargon.
So that's a very interesting point. So I guess outside of user interface, like social acceptance, mindshare, right? What does it take to really, is it just a killer application like ChatGPT that's going to come and change people's mind? What does it take to really create that mindshare among like the masses so that the technology gets adopted? What do you think? Like, what is missing? I guess what would it take to change people's mindshare? I guess
maybe incentive. also, and perhaps seeing some sort of like influencers, like we've seen a lot of, or like government use cases. Unfortunately, that's really what drives people, makes them feel more safer to utilize a certain platform. I mean, we saw the use case, for example, of WorkCoin, right? There was a big rush to utilize that, but then I have to pull back and figure it out, like where is that data stored, right? Which is also a big issue, like where is that data stored? Is it stored in the platform and then you're responsible for handling the data, or is the user storing that data? So, those are more complex narratives that the common person will have no idea what you're talking about. And so I think, again, we need to have more maybe roundtables, mix match, and bring these people in and to help us to find solutions and answer those questions that perhaps in our circle, we don't often have to deal with.
Yeah, maybe same question to you guys. Like, what does it take? Should we have like a stadium named ZK? What does it take to change people's mindshare, right?
Yeah, I think maybe for some applications, economic incentives will be enough. For example, I assume if a bank can run its own ZK blockchain internally or something like that, it's going to become cheaper. It's going to be easier to prove to the state that he's complying with regulations. So if it is cheaper for the company that's going to use it, it's probably going to get adopted. Maybe the final user won't even know about ZK. It might be just some thing hidden in the back end of some server, but that will push, I think, like the usage. Well, if you need to have some security, maybe you have a device that communicates with sensors and is running critical infrastructure. You might also want ZK for security reasons. So in that case, it will get adopted for another kind of economical incentives, but more indirectly. I don't know, Victor, if you have another opinion on that.
Yeah, mindshare. How do you change people's mindshare to adopt the technology? I guess that's kind of the question.
So the general public.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely, I can. I definitely agree with what you all have said so far, and I also may take it in a different direction as well, which is, there's kind of there's different aspects of snarks that basically are used for applications. The two big ones being succinctness and then privacy. And the succinctness applications, in terms of key transparency being the one, but then obviously all those applications in the blockchain community, which are super high value today. You have people who are paying high transaction fees, and if you use a system with ZK, they can pay low transaction fees. And so in that case, you have a really clear driver of, I'm doing something today, and I'd like to do it cheaper. I think that we need to find use cases where we can actually improve the experience of users and to really convince them that they should be using this. We've seen a lot of marketing for privacy. Signal being an absolutely right example of an application which is really privacy focused. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be a huge driver of people adopting it. People adopt, other applications just as much. And there's been a little bit of an uptick with big companies like Meta, really lauding their engine encryption, and Apple really going in on privacy, but it still seems kind of marginal as far as the value goes for companies, and the users don't seem to be acting with the idea that they should be valuing their own privacy highly. And I'm not sure how to change that exactly, although I'd love to see that change as a society. Regulation is one way to approach this. Yeah. If we regulate the entire industry and require higher privacy, then we can push things faster. And I think that there's a lot of room for regulation here to basically make it a mandate to have higher privacy and to stop these big data breaches that kind of become of national concern.
Yeah. So that's a great point. And I guess both of you pointed like succinctness, like the commercial, you have lower transaction fees. That makes sense. That's a big incentive. But on privacy, and you kind of mentioned that on your list specifically, it seems that privacy applications have more challenges in terms of being accepted. And funny enough, zero knowledge is kind of reference to privacy first. So what is it? Is it the messaging aspect of it? Is it's harder to come up with applications that makes meaningful life? I'm trying to understand, in your view, is it more a technology problem, or is it a messaging, PR, you know,
I would like to start with that, but I think it's the psychology, right? So we had the boom of social media apps, right? So we learn how to share our data, and now we are told to own and not share our data. So we got to it's going to take a little bit of time to change the narrative and understand and share with people what is the difference and how now with emerging of AI technology, quantum computing, and so on, what are the actual risks of sharing data online, sharing your picture, your voice, and videos, and so on. So all this information have to be kind of like restructured. It's still at the beginning, so it's normal for society not to necessarily know what to do with these technologies, and the tech space push forward, which is what it has to do. But then society, when it has to be implementing a new technology, there is a moment of adjustment, and it starts with I think university, governments, but also from us to be able to start that narrative. And you mentioned something specifically on security and identity, and I think most people, again, don't have a real understanding of the repercussions that sharing their data online could have. So I think we have to make sure to have that narrative. And very quickly, I'm super bullish on the Coinbase utilizing certain like advertising, and then Solana just came out with a really interesting another advertising. Perhaps utilizing this kind of mainstream way of telling a story for people and showing them how you can utilize ZK and this technology for the betterment of their privacy online because of these technologies that are emerging and perhaps putting people at risk, their identity at risk.
And then like the same question for you guys, privacy-focused applications, right?
Would you maybe expand the question a bit?
Yeah, so basically so you had the list, it was all like succinctness, yes, roll-ups, lower cost, and then Marco said, hey, lower transaction cost, that's incentive enough. But thinking about applications that focus on privacy, definitely there has been a challenge in terms of users adopting them or seeing value in them. So the question was it more of a technology problem, or is it the communication messaging problem, or what are, I guess, the issues that still needs to get resolved so that those also can see, I guess, a more broad adoption or acceptance?
Yeah, it's definitely both. It's both technology and desire to use it. It's kind of like a supply and demand thing in a little bit. The quote, the paraphrase quote, which I'm going to paraphrase again from Vitalik about no one's going to pay $20 to hide their buy a coffee transaction, and that is absolutely true. And that's kind of the point about we need to bring the costs of using ZK lower and lower and lower. If creating a ZK proof takes less than 200 milliseconds, then when an application developer says, I'm going to add this to part of the UX, and when you press this button, it's going to generate a ZK proof, then you can actually do so without degrading the UX. Whereas if it takes 30 seconds, users will stop using your app. And even if you tell them all about the great privacy benefits they're getting, they're going to stop using your app. But there's kind of a threshold where it's less than 200 milliseconds, they're not noticing UX degradation, and you can tell them about their new privacy benefits, and they'll go, oh, that's great. And then they can maybe use your app, they'll maybe be more inclined to use your app, then they'll ask, oh, why isn't this app private? So basically, it has to be really integrated into the point where basically it doesn't degrade the user experience, but it can give them the benefits of privacy. Because I think that then you have the value calculation of privacy winning out.
Yeah. Totally. Just to add on what he said, is if you have 1 billion users, of course you can lower costs as well.
Yeah. So we have about 5 minutes left. I had one more question on FHM and multi-party computation, and I don't know, whoever out of three of you want to comment on it, but where do you see that market going? Or what if you have an opinion specifically you want to mention? It's kind of pretty broad, but obviously there's a lot of use cases with FHM as well. Do you see that becoming a bigger conversation piece and getting more adoption as well, or you think there are more bottlenecks there as well that needs to get addressed? What's your view? And same thing, I guess, multi-party computation as well.
Definitely there are all those things, but to be more clear, so FHE, I want to break it down into two different problems, which are both relevant to ZK. One of which is making the actual FHE computation verifiable. So one of the problems you have today is if you want to outsource computation to a server, and they're going to run a private program on it and then hand you back the result, you don't know what program they ran, and that program could arbitrarily leak your private key and all of your personal information. So these great privacy guarantees you're trying to get with FHE are not guaranteed unless you can do verifiable FHE in this setting. That's one setting. That's one application. That's one most people usually think of. But there's actually another one that I'm really excited about because I just basically learned about it a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to some developers from Google, and they said actually their biggest problem right now is they actually need a verifiable decryption. So basically that way when they ship, basically if you send a request to Google, let's say you're authenticating yourself, you're doing a CAPTCHA check, you can do the CAPTCHA check in FHE, they send you the result back, you decrypt it, and then you tell Google what the result was. Unfortunately, although they knew that they computed the computation correctly, they don't know you gave them back the right result. And so if actually there's a really small piece here, which is that if you just do FHE decryption inside of ZK, you can actually give them back the result, and you have a proof that shows that I decrypted the ciphertext you gave me and got this result. And that would unlock a huge number of applications, and it's actually incredibly feasible today. Going back to the fully verified FHE one, I think that's kind of more on the horizon. It's definitely not practical yet. It seems like we're going to need specialized proof systems for this. One exciting development recently has been lattice-based snarks, like Labrador latticefold, have shown that lattice-based snarks are possible, and lattice-based snarks are very good at lattice statements, which FHE is largely a lattice statement. I'm not an expert in this, so I don't know how it's going to work out. I think no one knows how it's going to work out, just it's not been done yet. But that's a very exciting new direction in terms of actually making verified FHE computation possible.
Marco, I don't know if you want to add anything or...
No, I'm really excited about all of this too. I'm waiting for the moment we have like the performance to be able to run ZK and FHE. There are many applications. If you are, for example, I was talking with Victor before, if you are doing private voting and you're using ZK to prove that you have counted the votes properly, at some point with our FHE, someone has to decrypt and has all the information of all the voters. For example, if we have FHE, we don't even need someone who actually decrypt the data. He can tally votes, shows results, keep everything private up to the end, send proofs. I think the amount of possibilities that this will enable will be really huge. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, we definitely need the voting application for sure, especially in the US, definitely. Apparently we can count votes, so definitely we need it. So with that, I think we only have a few minutes. Maybe opening up for questions, if anybody wants to ask any questions from the people on the panel.
We can have one question. Okay.
So question is for, I think, Victor from Risc. I mean, in your list, one of the item was messaging networks, right? So that brings my curiosity because I come from completely outside blockchain and I've been building 5G networks. So if we extend your imagination or your hypothesis, is it possible to use this technology into the networks, the communication networks, and improve security there? And it's just my curiosity. I don't know whether it's feasible or not, but there are lots of security problems outside blockchain as well. So that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of security you're talking about. So if you're talking about like, the application I was thinking of is there's kind of a need for policy enforcement. So if you're thinking about like WhatsApp groups and you're not to make sure, and WhatsApp wants to make sure that nobody has a illicit photography exchange group on WhatsApp. They could basically do policy enforcement using ZK. I want to be clear, there are some interesting implications of deploying this technology, and we need to be careful in doing so, but that's an application we could deploy. I think other than that, I'm not sure. I think of things like, I've heard various people talk about like doing ZK to show that you did networking communication properly. Unfortunately, that's not a verifiable statement. And so basically that's not actually going to be possible. But I definitely think that there are lots of applications out there that I don't know about yet. I think because we're so new in having practical ZK.
All right, great. Thank you, all of you, for
Thank you.
participating. Definitely was a great panel, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for sharing your ideas with us.